permission to do this. No. Oh. Setting up the custom meeting streaming service.
Ooh.
Now I just need to remember to press mute on the right ones.
We're live.
Are we live?
Right.
Now I just
We're
need
there.
to remember to press mute on the
Are we
right
there?
ones. Oh, I should pick that up and everything. We're live. Hey, hey.
Woohoo!
Wow.
Just so the people in the chat know, we thought we were going to be on a minute early.
What do you say?
A minute late is still quite
It's still
early, but-
really good
I
for
mean,
our standards.
seriously,
Yeah.
I got it done within 1 minute. I have a working camera thing. I mean, it's not me today. I gotta say, I'm
we're
actually
doing
doing
really
all right.
well.
I
Right.
feel
Anyway,
like you might have just jinxed it, but yeah.
yeah, there we go. Right. Well, I'm the host today, so there's the jinx right there. Welcome everyone. Hello. Welcome to a slightly delayed by a week 9 out of 10 testers. And it's a quite a hot topic at the moment for some of us on the call, handling conflict. So here we go. Let's do some introductions. Sana, you go first.
Hi, my name is Sanne. I work for Bartels and I'm currently on assignment at KLM.
Hannah.
Yeah, my name is Hanna Schlander and I work as a test consultant at Vish-Knight.
Viola.
My name is Veerle Verhagen and I'm a software tester for Dutch Railways. Woohoo!
Woo! Mr. Chris.
Hello, I'm Chris Armstrong. I am also a tester for my sins, and I am working currently at Redacted.
At Redacted, I say. And I am Shay, and I am a senior QEM at EasyJet. So here we go, handling conflict. Let's just jump right in. Conflict. It's cultural, it's personal, it's you can be in a meeting just hanging out there and all of a sudden someone says something and you're like, oh, I need to answer that. How do we do that? Where do we go
I
with
think
that?
it's interesting you say it's personal because I think it can be.
And it can become personal. Yeah.
And those are the worst.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we never have conflicts on here on 9 out of 10 testers, do we?
Yes, we do.
We're all mates. We're all mates.
All right, okay. So I'm going to latch on to that because I think that's very interesting. How do you define conflict? When does something become a conflict? I think we have had many occasions where we have different opinions on things, but it doesn't necessarily lead to a conflict. It leads to a discussion where maybe someone will have to compromise and other people will maybe get their way a bit more. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a conflict. So when is something a conflict, you think? How bad or how bad does it have to be, or how badly do the opinions need to diverge?
I think it might not even be when opinions diverge, but when maybe goals diverge. That's when I see it becoming the most heated. Like a very basic one, for instance, where you're about stability versus new features. That's two very different goals that can lead to some very heated conversations that I would label conflict. It's conflict of goals. I would lean that way more than opinions. Opinions are rarely
Yeah.
very transmutable, although they can clash.
Yeah. I see in the chat we've got Deborah saying raised voices or tones. And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely an indicator, I think.
I think the
think
words
that's-
we found were like despair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also when it feels like imbalanced or somehow unfair, and I know that word fairness doesn't necessarily always mean the same thing, but when it feels like there's an imbalance, and sometimes that can come from power constructs and stuff, but
But for
Yeah,
sure, like emotions are involved all over the place, like no matter how you label this.
I see
Yeah.
tension in the chat as well. I think that might be a good one as well, because you can have diverging opinions, or kind of like you said, like maybe your goals are different and it doesn't even necessarily need to be something really difficult or awkward or unpleasant. But I feel like tension might actually be the keyword.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
the most
that's a good
obvious
word.
one we think of when we think of conflict is aggression. But in the workplace, I agree. It tends to be more about tension, about despair, about negativity, more of these kind of more subtle cues that there's something going on.
Yeah, because I mean, in the workplace, well, in most of life, really, you can't just walk up to the person that who's being an idiot and slap them, can you? I
I
disagree
mean,
with you.
it's tempting.
Punch them in the nose. Yeah, I mean, we've all been there. We've all left the room and had to go take some time out, haven't we? And just sort of take a few deep breaths, count to 10, then count to 10 again, then go and find something else to kick. All of those.
Ooh, like a little story time, if I may.
Go for it.
About taking time to count to 10. I remember being in a conversation that had me so incredibly heated, which happens a lot, that then I'll start crying, which is actually anger manifests as tears.
Mm.
And at that
Yeah.
moment, I literally said, "Look, I have to hang up right now, or I'm going to say or do things I'll regret." And I ended the conversation. And that was actually later used against me. That was like, "You're unprofessional enough to take a break to go calm down. Like,
Oh my
that just shows
God.
me you're not mature enough to handle conflict at work." I was like,
Wow.
I thought that was the rational thing to do, to go off
Wow.
and
Yeah.
count to 10.
Ah, that sucks.
And it was
Oh
just
man.
used against me in the very next conversation. Like, that just shows how immature you are. I'm like, that was the most mature response I could have shown at that moment. Like, I didn't cuss you out. I didn't hit you. I didn't slap you. I didn't do any of the things I wanted to do. I went off and I calmed down first and came back to the table to have another conversation about this thing. But I remember just visually, even now, I'm feeling the emotional reaction of that moment. It's like rushing all the way back over me. I'm
I'm
even getting slightly
feeling
red
that
cheeks.
emotional.
Oh no.
I
I think
was
we've
so
all,
I feel
mad.
well, at least you did that. I
that's
mean,
yeah.
because I think we've all been in those meetings where you're sort of sitting there and you're going, okay, I'm just going to sit here. I'm not going to say anything or tough it out. And being able to just turn around and go, look, just give me a couple of moments, go do that, and then come back to the conversation. I mean, is that the best way to handle conflict, particularly in the workplace? Is step away?
Well, when you're that emotional, I don't think there's
Mm,
anything constructive that's going to come out in the next moments.
Hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
think there is a situation when you're that upset or that angry or whatever you want to label it, that despairing, annoyed, full of tension. When you're that full of it, I don't think there's anything constructive that comes out in the next like couple of 10 minutes. But that's from my perspective, which is always
Mhm.
to go
yeah.
and calm down first. And I think in general, and I've spoken to especially Chris about this before, we are very bad at actually showing when we are angry. And it's not always necessarily not constructive. Like, it can be very useful to indeed, like I did, just get up and say, "I am so upset right now. I'm walking out." And that is, of course, a huge signal, but staying in it isn't useful either. So
No,
it is communication in either case.
because
People think they carries on, like they just think whatever you're doing is fine because there's no reaction to any of these things.
yeah.
As you say, the point that I always remember with Sano is I was frustrated in work with various decisions and people, bad behaviors and things. And she said, "You British are too reserved. You're too polite. You're too, enabling of bad behavior." And you're all just like, "Oh yes, this is fine," or "Oh, I was jolly annoying," and nothing actually happening as a result of it. And she said, "Sometimes you've got to just," and she just slammed a table very loudly. We were in a big expo hall at a conference,
Oh.
and there was a sudden silence. People looked
Whoa.
around, and she's just like, "You see," and and she's saying this is a moment, like, people, don't do it all the time, that
Uh-huh.
relentless whatever, but sometimes people need to see the actual way that they're behaving is being received in a way beyond just a word or a silence complaint, or going behind and reporting something, like you're saying that a physical change, stepping away, doing those things certainly has an impact in those bits, and choosing the right time and the right way to do that thing for your audience, because the optics and the perception of how things are, some people are just on one, aren't they? And they don't really pay any attention to how you're dealing with. And to the point that I've just noticed that Eamon's noted about remote, that's very different also, isn't it?
Yeah.
I
I
love
think that's
how
where passive aggression comes from. When you get so annoyed constantly and never give that outlet, I think that's where
Yeah,
that
but
usually comes from.
I find also, I mean, the thing with remote where it can build a bit is if you have video meetings, it's normally more okay. But if it's a lot of typing back and forth, that just tends to, the tone can be misinterpreted, and you miss like the physical cues that you're not agreeing, and it can turn nasty quite quickly.
There's a lot of research backing you up, Hannah. That is so true. Like not being able to see the entire body and not having the actual face-to-face interaction. Like it is so
Yeah.
clear
And,
that causes conflict.
I mean, sometimes it's just as little not putting a smiley in, or like, and yeah, any smileys while typing. It's just text, and then it's hard to read if it's like sarcastic, or are you like are you serious?
Yeah,
Like I don't really
I'm
know.
gonna have to say the smileys will sometimes make it worse for me. If
Yeah.
somebody
Can
will
as
always,
well.
especially like we had back at another like when I was still doing consultancy and I was at like one place where I was testing, and they had you know, in Slack you can label new emoji whatever you want, like you can just give them a name. They had introduced like the normal smiley, like just the one that goes like they had reintroduced it so that they could give it a different name, and it was called passive aggressive asshole.
They all, yeah, that would be it. Yeah. Just sort of sit there.
Yeah, it's like sometimes when people put that smiley at the end of something, it kind of sounds like they're like they want
Yeah.
to give you a bollocking, but they're not, but they're restraining themselves like really hard not to.
Yeah. You seemed like you wanted to kill somebody today. Lol. Smiley face. Emoji emoji. Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting the difference between remote and in person. You're lacking I don't know what, three-quarters of your body your what body
In
gives.
view, yeah. You
Yeah, yeah.
can't read people's body language as
Yeah, body
well,
language.
Yeah.
Thank you.
and
So
even what you see is limited because it is a facade to some extent, and yeah, you can't really tell what's going on.
If everyone has their camera on as well,
Yeah,
you
that's
might
true.
not
yeah,
see
It could just
yeah.
anything.
be voices. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
but you're lacking sort of a lot of the ability to convey with body language that you're gonna step over the table and punch that person or through their screen. So I mean, like one of the sort of sayings is like where if a human loses one of their senses, the rest get heightened a bit more. If we've lost some of our body language, should we work on being a little bit more honest, going circling around? Because I mean, a bit more honest, it's hard to get more honest than a Dutch person, to be fair. But
I don't
hear
think
me out
that's
here,
true.
people.
I
Yeah, I
don't
don't
think
think
that's
that's
true,
as true
but
as you think. We're direct, but not
we're
necessarily.
rude, but not honest.
We are conflict avoidant
Ah,
as a culture.
We're just
And
really rude.
yeah,
but so I mean, to my point, I think
Right.
should we in meetings sort of try and develop a culture of somebody's being a complete and utter sod. You just go, dude, you're making me angry. I'm not happy here. Should we be saying those kind of things?
I would say yes, but that is because I've been on a path of learning to do that a lot more and more over the years. And I find it constructive and scary as hell So it still really has me shaking in my boots every time I do this, but I am inclined to do it. And it's tough. It's also something I plan for. Maybe that helps to give some context. So I will have been annoyed, I will have been irritated, I will have been angry, and then plan the next conversation where I will go through those points. Look, the way you said this thing last meeting made me feel a certain way. I'm thinking you don't value what I bring to the table. Is this what, in fact, you were saying?
Yeah.
That is incredibly difficult to do, even for a Dutch person. The more I do it, though, the more I find those things, well, it's 50-50 whether they work out. Like, but it's good for me personally, even when the
Yeah, because you get it
conversations,
off your.
and that might be a little bit selfish sometimes, I feel.
But it's okay to be selfish because otherwise you're the one of the things I'm a fan of saying to people, like from a leadership point of view, is if you're feeling the pain, the other person it doesn't know that you're feeling that way. So if you're doing the work of two people, your boss is going, "Hey, everything's green because my team's great," and then and once you start doing the work of one person, they have to say, "Oh shit, everything's not green, everything's not great," to their bosses. Similarly, I guess if we don't say anything, we have to walk around with that burden on us. I mean, a little story time from me. I was in a change control meeting, and a person completely mucked up their the ticket that sort of goes through the gateway, and I said on the call, they didn't do the job correctly, referring to the person who had filled out the ticket, which wasn't the person representing it. Afterwards, he messaged me and said, "Listen, I didn't appreciate the way you talked about me in the call. You said I hadn't done my job, and I really take it quite. I'm quite passionate about my job." And I was like, "Oh shit." And first thing I did, thank him. Thank you so much for bringing this up. Let me clarify what I said, but absolutely, I need to bear that in mind. And I felt really sort of not empowered, but yeah, I was like, wow, that was a cool thing to do from my point of view because it helped me improve. But they could have just walked around with it the whole time and gone, yeah,
Oh,
well,
passive aggressive smileys at
yeah,
you.
yeah, on the next call. Was that a good enough job for you, Shay? Did I do it well enough? Lol. That kind of stuff. So we chat about it, but I really appreciated that, I thought. So maybe
So
people should be a bit more that way.
similar story time, but different reaction. I had a project manager that would just constantly dodge responsibility. And we were nearing a deadline. They clearly weren't going to make it. And I needed that test environment with certain test data up and running by yesterday. So eventually I got in touch with them and they were all excuses. And it was, this person had been sick and that person had been down and this data wasn't available. And I'm like, look, I'm not having this discussion with you. I just need to know when you're going to have this up. And then they were like, yeah, but I think, they're going to ask why. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure they're going to ask why. But honestly, that is not my problem right now. I need this environment up and running. I'm not having this discussion. So I was very blunt and very, I would say, rude to this person, but this had been building up for weeks and weeks. And I did say, look, I've had this from you all of the time. It doesn't matter. It doesn't help. I don't care why. Let's just get this work going. Yeah, but they're going to ask questions. I'm like, absolutely. And you'll have to answer them, but not to me and not right now. And I cut it off. That person did not have that learning moment that you did, Shay.
No.
Like at no point did it occur to them that their communication was not useful in that moment or should have been brought differently or in a different kind of like, okay, let's work together to get this environment up. You don't need my excuses. Let's just try. They basically went and reported me. And it came back down the line, like 3 bosses up, 3 bosses down. And they're like, yeah, she was very unkind to me. And this is where all the practice finally came in useful, to which I responded, well, that wasn't in the job description.
Oh, damn, son.
Oh my God, what a burn. That is awesome.
So I felt very proud
That's a
that
great
day.
response.
My
Wow.
personal manager, of course, knew her. I knew I could say that with her. So she just grinned at me and she's like, yeah, you're probably right. And she just left it. And that was the end of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never got a phone call from that project manager ever again. So, you know,
So,
some
all right.
bonus.
So imagine, right, you're in the situation where you actually have hurt someone's feelings beyond repair, or you actually have a kind of conflict, but you do still need to, I don't know, like work with that person. What'd you do? How'd you go about it?
That's a tough one.
Assume you're right. Let's play this at expert mode. Assume
Well,
that
I'm
you are
always
right.
right.
But you still need that person. What are you gonna do?
Oh,
I've been in this
I love it how we're
situation.
all stumped.
well,
No,
Sanna's full of the story times today. We're going to just have a separate Sanna story time jingle.
I don't think there's a story time here, but I've been in this situation twice and had two very different results. One, I ended up reading this very brilliant book that I absolutely want to plug, which is called Crucial Conversations: How to Have Conversations with People About Things That Are Relatively Unsafe or Very Emotional.
Mhm.
And one of the advices that was in that book is like, what story are you carrying with you that might be coloring all of the interactions you're having? So like, what baggage is it that you're holding? And when it came to this, again, it was a manager. The other advice that they gave, like, if you can genuinely respect them for something, note that down and try to at least have that conversation.
Mhm.
And there were plenty of things about this manager that completely conflicted with me, but there were also plenty of things that were there to respect. Like, they were not incompetent managers. So there was enough there that I could genuinely, in conversations, say, hey, great job on doing that. I appreciate you being there for this and this.
Mhm.
And analyzing my own baggage. I had the whole suitcase full of expectations of what managers were supposed to do. And this one specific manager was not living up to my baggage. That did not make them necessarily incompetent. So we got through that and we actually became very good coworkers. But it took
Nice.
time.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of these conversations, these analyses, and this. I literally wrote out all the chapters of this book and worked through them one by one. I was like that kind of student. 2 years down the line, had the same thing happen, tried it again, left a job because of it. So again, 50-50.
Nice.
And I think
there's a kind of selfish way to deal with this as well, right? Because you live in your own head 24/7, and we play out a lot of conversations. We have a lot of thoughts. We might draft those emails, have those conversations played out,
Especially late at night, just before
all,
I go to sleep.
yeah, all by ourselves, and ultimately, like, not addressing those things is a persistent burden. And those conversations are often not easy, not things that we look forward to, in the same way as the millennial, doesn't want to make a phone call that is the simplest, easiest thing in the world to do. And I build up and worry about it and push it off and procrastinate and those sorts of things. And ultimately, I am more aware these days than I used to be that having these threads that are not pulled, these unclosed circles, actually weigh on me and my mental health, my focus, my ability to be present and be me, the best version of me. And so I kind of have to remind myself, or invite my friends to remind myself, that I have to do these things, because ultimately, if I've had that conversation, if I've addressed those things, whether directly with people or in an adjacent way, which is safer to do, but in dealing those things, in sharing those bits, in order that no longer is that a thing that's just within my own head cycling that I don't feel has ever got a resolution. It's got the potential to have a resolution, and I've always felt that I would rather know that it's never going to be fixed than not, or better still, it be addressed, because I kind of felt like I'd rather fail but at least know, rather than sort of regret and not be able to get closure on those things, because not achieving closure ultimately breaks me slowly but surely.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Can I drop a story time? Because I've
Make it
actually
so.
been in a situation very, very similar to what you're describing, where I was a scrum master for a bit, and then suddenly, if you're a scrum master, you're suddenly invited to all of these meetings with management, basically with people that are higher in the hierarchy than you are. And in my innocence, and possibly also in my Dutchness, like we tend to be quite casual about hierarchies. So I was in one of these meetings, and I actually believed that my input would be valued, even if that input was not necessarily agreement. And so I sat in a meeting, and basically the statement was, well, somebody said, I think we all agreed that. And because I had been in a separate meeting with a bunch of people who were also there, and we had all said, oh my God, it's such a shit idea, we hate it. I was like, okay, be brave, be brave. So I said, okay, well, actually, the temperature dropped by about 10 degrees. And I went, actually, I don't recognize myself in that decision. Nobody said a thing. People just looked at me like, what are you even doing? And basically the person who was highest in the hierarchy, who was essentially making the decisions and telling everybody else that we all agreed with those decisions, never spoke to me again. And basically after that, didn't necessarily acknowledge my presence. And at some point, we were in a bigger, like kind of like a town hall, and I had a question, and it was a legit question. And so she was doing this thing, and she said, "Are there any questions?" And I raised my hand, and the look she gave me,
Oh,
it was not good. It was not good. That was not a good moment for me. But I do feel like, wow, I still carry that with me, because I feel like, okay, yes, probably I completely misunderstood and misinterpreted the purpose of that meeting, and it was not actually the point for me to say that I didn't agree. I learned that thing, but I do feel like, wow, the way that went, and the way that I guess never really ended and never got wrapped up. I'm like, yeah, I still have that somewhere in my brain.
Yeah,
There's two things
it's
that
hard
are
to let go.
Yeah, it's really hard to let go of, because I feel like, okay, so maybe I shouldn't be disagreeing, and also that person hates me. And also
but did she answer your question?
yeah, because she thought I was gonna disagree, or like I don't know, like put her on the spot somehow. Actually, it was a question about something really positive that they said, we're trying to achieve this and we really hope it's gonna work out. And so I asked, did like, not you personally, but did that team manage that thing? And she said, yeah, we did. And actually it was a moment where she could go like, yeah, celebrate. So she did answer my question, and it wasn't a bad question at all. But yeah, the look she gave me very much told me, wow, you have not forgotten that interaction any more than I have.
Yeah. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
flip it on I'm gonna flip it a little bit on its head. I mean, I've mentioned it ever so slightly, but I think, what are some tools that enable, because we're most of us are, we're in leadership positions, or we lead meetings, or things like that. How do you receive conflict, or how do you make the space safe enough for people to be able to go, say, like Viola did, I disagree with that, and it not be a thing? Are
Right.
there tools for that? Is there a way?
Let, let me say that I think it is, no matter how you do it, I think it's important that you do it, because the thing, maybe the reason at the time that I felt I need to speak up in this meeting, is that with half the people in that meeting, the day before we'd had a conversation, everybody saying how shit the idea was, and that it wasn't going to change anything. And so I felt, okay, listen, we can power on with this and not achieve anything, or we can actually say we think the idea is shit. And I do still think that would have been better. I'm not saying my way of addressing it was the best at the time, learned. But I do feel like if you want the best solution, then you better make sure that people feel safe to disagree with you, because otherwise they're just going to say yes to every absolutely stupid idea that you have.
We mentioned safety a couple of times, haven't we?
Yeah, it's the
Yeah.
hardest part, safety, because it's not only subjective, it's also these conversations are full of landmines and passive aggressive emojis.
Isn't that right?
I just learned from the chat that the laughing crying emoji is passive aggressive. I use that all the time. I'm probably very
What?
old.
Get out.
Well, it
I
depends
use
on the
that as well.
conversation and
The
generation.
upside down face. But I mean, like, so if you're leading a meeting, I mean, one of the things that you could, to make it a safe space, you could call it out, couldn't you? And go, guys, well, everybody, I've got you in here to talk about this idea. If you disagree with it, now is the best time, because if we move forwards with it, it'll be more difficult down the line. Is that is it maybe just about framing? To explicitly make it a place for conflict to be enabled?
I don't think it's necessarily framing, and I don't think calling that out necessarily makes it safe. Maybe more useful is to know when people are exhibiting signs that it is unsafe, and because you don't know where people's comfort is or where the landmines are or what stories or baggage or suitcases they're lugging with them in terms of the stuff. But like, you have the silence, the violence, the freeze. Those reactions are more of a sign that it's unsafe, and that would mean withdrawing or changing things. The other thing you triggered in me when you said that is again something Virla hammers on a lot. What is the agenda of the meeting? Like, are you looking for a full consensus? Are you looking for a decision? Are you looking for opinions? Making that very clear really helps.
Right. And
What,
then I
looking for a
just,
freaking agenda would be the first place.
right. But then I just want to make a small point, because I do still feel like in my heart of hearts, I do still feel that I did have somewhat of a point at the time, because I feel like if you're going to invite me to a meeting, you're going to expect some kind of interaction. You're going to expect some kind of input or whatever. If your goal is just to tell me things, send me an email. Don't invite me to
By
a
an
meeting.
email, hey Chris.
Yeah.
I'm not wearing that shirt today, sadly.
No, you're not.
But instead today it says control freak, which is still relevant. Because I do think a lot of the times people who operate those ways, at least after they've been told it's not helpful, are people who are trying to have a bit of power in those sorts of bits. I've worked with people who ask kind of for ambiguous requests. They have ambiguous requests, and then they try and get you to commit to doing things, and then they chase you for those ambiguous requests, and you have to go through the mental sort of block of asking for clarification on things without suggesting a few alternative ideas, because they like those extra ideas and they also want those things in the same time frame. That is a micromanager who's, I believe, very intentionally operating in a way where they want you to commit to more than you would otherwise, rather than dealing with direct requests. Ambiguity is where a lot of power play can be held.
So if you reverse that, safety would be clear purpose.
Clarity.
Clarity.
Yes. And and you can request things, you can hold people in line, but sometimes, to the safety point, sometimes you don't really feel safe asking for those things, but it's the way you can deal with people like that whilst you have to. It's sometimes finding coping mechanisms, finding allies, finding people you can talk to cope with strategies, because much as we would all like to be able to just flip the bird at people and say I'm done, sometimes we're not in those situations where we can just do it outright. But we also want to be direct, and perhaps if we're leaders, we've got the opportunity to set a bit of an example and advocate for better practices where we can. But it can be a minefield, and I think that level of ambiguity, just to the same point of not knowing the outcomes of confronting stuff, that level of ambiguity can ruin a day, ruin focus, ruin a bunch of stuff. And so it's clarity. It's tale as old as time. If we all know what we're trying to achieve when we're trying to achieve it, we understand expectations. We've got a much better chance of actually delivering those things. And I worry that there's still a lot of people who are succeeding in business by operating not with directness and clarity, but with directness and ambiguity, and lording that over people.
I
And
would
everybody
add,
has their baggage, don't they? There's always the assumption that, I'm in the room and everybody's the same as me, but it's not, is it? That person sitting there, they have as much, if not more, or going on. So to sit there and sort of hope that your ambiguity, your, I don't know, bullying by exclusion or something like that um, is the right thing to do. Making that assumption.
would it be correct to say that's not the only thing fueling conflict in that situation? Because I have a lot of people in my life that are ambiguous while still being direct. It's also that you maybe don't have the full respect, the mutual respect. So the
Yeah.
fact that it's lack of respect and the not having the clarity or the purpose.
It can be respect, it could be trust, and because they want you to earn their trust specifically in what they think trust is. But this is my baggage speaking now.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking, like, in general, if somebody's a micromanager, a shouter, a directive manager, very fussy or unfussy or ambiguous, like, if there is the mutual respect, there is the willingness and safety to muddle through, and it won't generally be a conflict. It's like, oh yeah, you need the details, dear micromanager. Let me give you all the details I can. We'll muddle through, and you'll feel safe and I'll feel safe, and it won't be a whole big thing. But if there's already this whole, like, you're trying to control me, I don't respect that, and then go into the conversation, I think that is the other part of that equation. It's not just them being direct and ambiguous.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I think on that note, how about we wind up there? Because I think we've covered both sides of the coin. We've talked about receiving conflict. We've talked about handling conflict. We've even in some parts given ideas about giving conflict or taking it to them.
More conflict.
More conflict, more
We need
time,
more.
all
I
the
still
time.
say that's useful. I still say we are all still generally
Yeah.
not good
Mikey take
enough
it.
at speaking up. And I
I mean,
wouldn't
Mikey
phrase
take,
it
well,
that
the
way.
Dutch aren't rude and enjoying conflict. They're all really shy and retiring and just a bit direct.
Well, no. Before we wrap up, like, I,
Okay.
I think Sonnet is right. I think we're direct and quite rude, but also quite conflict averse. But I feel like that's not unique to us. I think humans generally, a lot of us tend to be conflict averse because conflict is scary. Like you might get ostracized from the tribe. You might lose your status. But I do also agree that what Sana said, it can really be useful. And the thing we pointed out earlier, like it's important to have that safe space for dissent because it just kind of brings you the best ideas, like it brings you the best solutions. And so one thing we're currently working on in our team is giving feedback, giving feedback to your colleagues. It can be both, I guess, positive and negative is not really the words we should be using, but for shorthand, like, telling people when they're doing really well, but also maybe giving them a heads up when maybe they're not quite living up to your expectations, or maybe when they've dropped the ball a few times. Um, and I think why is that so scary? But we find it scary, and I do think it is useful at the same time. So I think,
I think it's just about how you do it as well, because some
yeah.
people are not very tactful when giving
Yeah.
negative feedback.
And that's where the rude and direct bit comes in. Like
Yeah.
if we were able to be a bit more gentle, we could become less conflict averse because it would be less scary.
But it's
I
also
think,
optics, isn't it? Because people think, if you're softly, then they can do other things. Like there is that sort of cultural perception. Sorry, Hannah.
Yeah.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, Swedes are both conflict averse and well, not rude and direct. We complain behind your back instead, pretty much.
The worst.
So,
Yeah.
and this is the last point I'll make on this, and then Shay, I'll let you wrap us up. But the phrasing, like this thing you did made me feel this way, which gave me the idea that this is going on. And then just checking in, like, is this what happened? And then they
Yeah.
can respond, and that is, I think, the best way of framing, like, you just asked us for an opinion to Fearless example. Now I've given it and you don't seem pleased, which is making me feel like you didn't want my input. Or that isn't valued. Like that phrasing is consistently the safest way I've found. And it doesn't have to be that blatantly obvious, right? It could be like, this thing happened. Now here's the thing I'm telling myself about that situation. I'm checking in. Obviously, these are mostly one-to-ones.
Yeah.
But that is the phrasing that I found most useful.
It's context informed
Yeah,
feedback, isn't it? It works with giving compliments as well.
Yeah, it does.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
it's a good way to like express how it makes you feel instead of just saying, "Hey, that's shit." Which
And
some
it's also
people-
not you are making me angry. It's the thing you
Yeah.
did. It's like, because then you're
Yes.
not
Yeah.
calling somebody.
Because because actually going on to what you've done without like giving the context of how it feel, it can just get really personal.
Yeah,
Because
so like not you're an
some-
idiot, but the thing you did was idiotic.
Yeah.
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 I
You're
am
Pretty much.
absolutely putting that in a notebook and quoting it.
not-
It is worse than all the passive aggressive emojis that I can put in a message. You are not an idiot, but the thing you did was idiotic. I love it.
You're not a dick, but that thing you did
The thing you did was
made you a
dickish.
dick.
Oh my God, that's such a good note to end on.
Yeah, I think there we go. So, right, here we go. Outro. So let's find, how do we find people on the socials at the moment, Hannah? What are you on?
Yeah, you can find. I'm on LinkedIn. So that's the best place to find me.
Okay, what about you, Vila?
Yeah, same thing for me. LinkedIn, I periodically neglect it completely, but it's the most reliable way to get in touch with me. So drop me a note there.
Chris.
I'm pretty much the same. I am also on Blue Sky, as indeed we are on 9 out of 10 testers. But as with all of these things, LinkedIn, there is a much more active presence than on the Blue Sky stuff.
What about you, Sana?
You can find me at Tech Sonetized on Blue Sky and LinkedIn and any other platform that I'm on. Just shoot me a message.
And I am mostly at Shaymouse on Blue Sky and Twitter and Instagram and all the rest of the socials. And then also LinkedIn is or FaceLink, LinkFace, LinkedIn, Facebook is the new cool kid on the block.
So new.
Yeah. We're also, as Chris said, we're on the socials as 9 out of 10 testers, and we're on LinkedIn there. So come and continue the conversation. Tell us what you liked. Tell us what you'd like to see. We love ideas to help us to keep this going.
Tell us if we're shit. Don't say it to other people behind our backs. Just
Yeah.
just straight up.
Tell us how it
us-
made you.
Swedish.
Tell us
Don't
how
tell
it
us
made you
we're
feel.
shit. Our show is shit.
Yeah.
Yes, true.
And invite us to your event.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. We are a panel for hire, and if you know of any conferences that would like that, we can come and do this live. We have done it a few times before. It was well received. Not many people left the room, is what I'm taking from that. And yeah, just come and say hi. We love to have the conversation. So thank you all. And now I'm going to try and find the stop button on one of these screens.
And we
So
can sit in the meeting and say, are we all?